Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Ras Al Khaimah Art Festival. I'm so excited to be here. Every year we host a speaker series event with a few different panels with experts. So glad that everyone could make it to our 12th edition. Today's panel, which is the first panel of the entire speaker series, is titled Rewinding the Clock, Recollections of Life in the Jazeera Village. It's a great honor for me to be here, and I'm very, very excited to introduce our panelists. My name is Janan Farhat, and I work as a research associate at the Al-Qasmi Foundation for Policy Research. Our first session will celebrates the rich culture, intangible heritage, and unique history of Jazeera Hamra. Led by a team of experts, it turns back the clock 1 hour, as that's all the time that we have today, unfortunately, to explore what life was like for villagers and demonstrate how this town became frozen in time as the UAE's last intact ancient permanent village. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Seth Thompson, who's an associate professor at the College of Architecture, Art and Design at the American University of AJAH. Our second speaker for today is His Excellency Ahmed Al-Ubaid Al-Khuraiji, Director General of the Department of Antiquities and Museums at the Government of Ras Al Khaimah. And our third speaker for today is Mr. Christian Velde, resident archaeologist, also of the Department of Antiquities and Museums at the Government of Ras Al Khaimah. Please, quick round of applause for our special panel. So I think we'll get right into it. Seth, could you tell me a little bit about your work on the Jazeera Hamra Digital Heritage Project? I know that it's shed light on the rich cultural tapestry of the village. Maybe what inspired you to embark on this digital preservation project? And can you share some key insights from your digital documentation that particularly fascinated or surprised you?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm amazed by the transformation of Jazeera. Since I first visited in 2007, it's an amazing transformation. I first visited Jazeera Hamra back then on a tour with the Architectural Heritage Society English-speaking chapter. And there was a nice man who had lived in Jazeera Hamra who told us about the village, and I was captivated. There was such a rich heritage here, and that I wanted to learn more. I began working on the Jazeera Hamra Digital Heritage Project, developing a model between 2009 and finishing it around 2014. And I wanted to find a vehicle that would best capture the stories that were embedded in Jazeera Hamra. And I wanted to create a model that would tell these stories and capture both the intangible and tangible cultural heritage. At the time that I was visiting, the site was at risk. Things were collapsing, and I felt it was very urgent to being able to document the site, create a model, and to create a discussion about this possibility. I think that the biggest thing that I learned from creating this model was I come from an art museum background, and so where the object takes precedence and the intangible, the stories, the artist bio supports the artwork. But here, what we needed to do was to flip that model, where the tangible, the buildings and structures, supported the culture, traditions, and heritage of the people of Jazeera Hamra. The other thing that I knew that I needed to address within that model was the fact that there was a definite concern that people from away were writing a history of the people from this region. And so I wanted to create a model that was inclusive of all the voices that wanted to be able to participate in this digital heritage project that I was envisioning.
Thank you so much, Seth. I think that's probably one of the most beautiful things also about this particular project, that it made it very accessible to people who perhaps weren't in Ras Al Khaimah or weren't in the UAE at the time, and then they could is it correct that they could access this digital heritage project?
What I did is just create the model for it. So I got to a certain point, and then in 2012, there was a group of young men whose families had lived within our Hamra, who were going to be able to work to restore the village. And so I knew that that project was not necessarily as important now that the physical project is going to be restored, which I was very excited about hearing, because it is a wonderful kind of place.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think it's what's even more remarkable about this is you said you began the project in 2009, and that's 5 years before the project of restoring and conserving Jazeera Hamra at a very large scale began. I think both Christian and Mr. Ahmed can speak to this a little bit more than I can, but it's so great to hear that this project began, I think, almost 2 decades ago, and I'm so excited to hear about some of the other works that you've embarked on since then. Mr. Ahmed, I turn to you. So as the head of the Antiquities and Museums Department, what challenges have you encountered in balancing preservation efforts with the development needs or interests of Ras Al Khaimah as an emirate?
Ras Al Khaimah. First of all, I would like to thank the Qasmi Foundation for hosting us in this beautiful place, Jazeera Hamra, and in the beautiful fort of Jazeera Hamra. It's really look nice. Since year after year, we found that the festival is growing, and there is a lot of things to see and witness here in this festival. Thank you. Thank you very much. As your question, like we are in Ras Al Khaimah, always on preservation, the culture heritage of the Emirates, which include the tangible, the both tangible and intangible aspect, through a number of practices that include protecting the archaeological site from the purpose of urban expansion and attack on the buildings and landmarks that are within their archaeological site. We also carry out preservation and restoration work for historical buildings and monuments, such as this village in which we are located today. There are a number of challenges that we face when we come on protecting and preservation, but the directive and the support that we have from our leadership in the Emirates had a great impact in overcoming many challenges, and here we are today in the old Jazeera Hamra village, and with the restoration and development plan that is being implemented by a number of partners in this project, we contribute to achieve the culture tourism development of the Emirates and making Ras Al Khaimah as a destination that contribute the country culture and creative industry.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I couldn't agree more, honestly. At the Al-Qasmi Foundation, I cannot even take credit for this. My lovely colleagues have taken the lead on setting up the festival here at Jazeera Hamra Heritage Village. And they worked very, very closely together with your department of Antiquities and Museums. And in no way did this this festival be possible without the amazing efforts that your department has done? I mean, I'm looking at you, Hannah, I'm looking at you, Christian, I'm looking at you, Mr. Ahmed, the things that you guys have done to bring this village, to protect it, really, first and foremost, through conservation and restoration efforts, and to allow us this honor of hosting the festival. And I think, in some ways, repopulating it is what makes this experience really beautiful. And I think that also, in some ways, perhaps not so coincidentally, but in a really wonderful way, also helps support the economy of the emirate, of Ras Al Khaimah in general. So thank you so much for sharing your answer with us, and also for your hard work.
Just Junan, in this area, I just also, with your you mentioned like the three of us. Also, there is another soldier who's behind this work that happened here in Jazeera and Hamra from the beginning. We have three of our famous soldiers who's sitting here in front of us: Agnieszka, Eric, and Damian. Also, they are the soldiers who's working in the shadow to find the history of this village, and they really do a lot of things that maybe people they cannot they don't see it. They just do the excavation work, and they find, and all findings that we have in Jazeera Hamra, it's come because of their great work. Thank you.
Spoken like a true leader, might I say. Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed, and I look forward to meeting the three of you after the panel, because I personally am very passionate about Jazeera Hamra as well, which is, I think, why I'm here. But enough about me. Christian, I turn to you. So, as the chief resident archaeologist of Ras Al Khaimah, ladies and gentlemen, for the past few decades, you have witnessed and overseen the revival of Al Jazeera Hamra Heritage Village firsthand. So, based on your archaeological expertise, can you tell us what the present-day architecture of the village tells us about the former residents?
Well, the architecture you see today is already very special, because this architecture is an architecture where people lived in until the beginning of the change, the beginning of modernization, the beginning of oil. So it is really frozen in time in the 60s and the period before. So it is something very, very special, because it is something which we do not see at any other place in the UAE any longer. We have a little bit of restorations here and there, but in its complexity, we only see it here. And when we look at when we go through the village, when we go the footpaths which are now available for people to walk through, you can get this feeling of how the village might have looked like when it was still alive 50 or 100 years ago. And you can see and look into restored compounds to get a feeling of how they must have looked like, even those we cannot restore any longer because they have collapsed too much. So you can see that every of these compounds is really a sort of small area of a family. You can really get this feeling of tight community living very, very tight together on this original island.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, I think every villa really tells a story, right, about its inhabitants. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Every single villa tells a story, and there are different stories, and that's the beautiful thing when you go around to discover all these different stories, get a feeling of the different compounds, of the different size of the compounds, and of the different buildings inside those compounds.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think even the fort tells many, many stories about its former inhabitants, and I think also the former ruler. Is that correct? Did we have a former ruler living here?
Not a ruler, but a sheikh of the village. But when you look at the fort here, it has two functions. It's, of course, a residence, and you can see these summer houses here. You can see the winter rooms or winter houses, and you can see even parts which we found in excavations, which are preserved here to show that there are rooms which are even older and not any longer there in the last phase. But you can also see these big courtyards which we are sitting in, because this fort had two functions, and that's quite interesting as well. It has a defensive function, that's usually why we have these two towers. And this defensive function is quite important. This big courtyard was used by people into the area to move in with animals and families in case there would have been an attack, also from the desert or from the pirates. So it is more than just a compound shape we lived here. It is really the big security of Jazeera.
This is where we're sitting, ladies and gentlemen. Take note. It's not every day that you hear the history of a place you are actually sitting in or located in. Thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing that. Seth, I circle back to you. So, in your perspective, does the significance of the village's heritage extend beyond local or regional importance to potentially resonate with a global audience? And if yes, maybe how so?
Yes, absolutely. The United Arab Emirates has gone through a significant transformation the past 60 years. It's now known for skyscrapers, grand buildings, and ambitious plans. The Jazeera Hamra village, heritage village, provides a snapshot into traditional Emirati culture, heritage and traditions. So I think this is a very valuable place. I think when people travel, they want to be able to learn about other cultures, to be inspired, and to be able to reflect on their own culture and their own way of life. And the Al Jazeera Hamra Heritage Village allows people to learn about Emirati culture and tradition. And this enables people to be able to learn about this place, to be inspired, and to reflect. And so I think it's a wonderful place for the global visitor.
Yeah, definitely. Even as someone who's new to Ras Al Khaimah, I can say that this is easily one of my favorite places in the Emirate, and I think it's because of the festival, but it's also because of the rich history of the village and how much you learn about it just by walking through it and by seeing the incredible lives I think that Emiratis here lived, from the AJAH tribe and other tribes and other families. And I think also it's a testament to some wonderful urban planning, which is very sustainable, and that's also something that we will be talking about in our 6th speaker series panel, so I won't get ahead of myself. But thank you so much, Seth, for that. Mr. Ahmed, I have a question for you about the village. I have another question. So in your experience, how do initiatives like the preservation of Al Jazeera Al Hamra bridge the gap between preserving the past and fostering economic growth or sustainable development? Perhaps this is a little similar to the first question, but you can give us maybe an idea of your experience.
The work that took place in the restoration project of the old village in Jazeera Al Hamra come through a strategic vision set by the Emirates to invest on its ancient history by reviving the old city through restoration work on the historical building that formed the way of life in the past. The shops, which were formed of the local economy cycle, were restored. In addition to the restoration of the houses of merchants and business owners who contribute to support businesses in the city through different kind of businesses like wood trade, apparel trade, and those who own a large boats use it in traveling and transporting and transporting goods to and from various countries. There remains accounting trend in the strategy vision of the project, as it is the restoration work contribute to increase the share of culture tourism in the Emirates through a festival held in this place and through the events hosted by the site during the year, which attack the entrepreneur to practice with various local products to achieve profit and promote their business project.
Yeah, as someone who works at the Al-Qasmi Foundation, I can't disagree with you. Cultural tourism, I think, is one of my favorite types of tourism. I think it's also a very meaningful type of tourism when it's done ethically and when you do your due diligence in respecting the place in which you are visiting, and you respect the culture and you respect the history and the lives of the former residents, but also their descendants, many of whom come to Jazeera Hamra Heritage Village, and we see like both members of the AJAH family, but also other families and other Emiratis coming from Ras Al Khaimah and from Abu Dhabi and every part of the UAE just to see and also celebrate, I think, their own cultural heritage, and in that way contributing also to cultural tourism here. Christian, I have a second question for you. From your research, what pivotal historical events or societal factors have contributed significantly to shaping the cultural identity of Jazeera Hamra? Can you maybe share insights into a quote-unquote day in the life of different villagers in Jazeera Hamra?
Sorry. Let's say what shaped Jazeera Hamra is already in its name. It's an island, which is very, very special because most places are not on islands, they're just on the mainland. So when we are talking about shaping and the identity, it is very clear that the island was always in itself. Of course, the identity was also shaped by the tribe which settled it, mainly the AJAH tribe, which was a quite important tribe. And it was a tribe which was looking into the sea. The tribe has several places. It had in the 18th and 19th century even a place in Iran, which was part of the AJAH tribe. And there's still places in Oman today at the Batina coast. So it was a tribe which was connected to the sea, and so the island itself is very important for AJAH identity. Daily life is a little bit more difficult because, I mean, we can see in our excavations a sort of daily life, but that's mostly domestic life. That means we find places with cooking ovens, which still can be seen. Otherwise, we only have the buildings in itself. There are sometimes still material which we find inside the buildings, but they only reflect very, very little about daily activities. So we know actually, I mean, the courtyard is the most important part of a house. So most life is playing around in the courtyard during the day, which is cooking, but also the life of the children, the life of the family. The rooms itself are only used really in summertime when it's too hot to be outside, or in wintertime when it's too cold to be outside. But otherwise, the courtyard is the center of life in previous periods. And that's the big, big difference to today, where the courtyard does not exist any longer, where everybody lives in a villa, and maybe you have a main room in the villa where life turns around. But it is different from the idea that the courtyard is the center of life for a family. Otherwise, daily activities, or let's say even yearly activities for a place like Jazeera Hamra, because it was really reflected by the sea, of course the most important ones is pearl diving. And so we have to imagine that every year quite a large number of people from Jazeera Hamra from the male population went into their ships and moved out to the Balkans, being away from home for probably 2 months, sometimes even longer, before they're coming back with the harvest. Then, of course, we have other people who work on ships which are involved in trade, because trade is another important factor. And of course, when you fish pearls and you get an income from finding pearls, you get money which you can invest in trade again. So trade was a second important part of what people did here in Jazeera Hamra. And the third part is, of course, fishing. Again, projected into the sea. But not to forget, Jazeera Hamra has also and was anchored into land, because many families from Jazeera Hamra had palm gardens. Of course, not here in Jazeera Hamra, but in places like Khat or Fahlain, two oases which are really at the foot of the mountains further inland. So people and families moved between these inland oases and the palm gardens to the coast, and in from the coast alive towards the sea with trade, pearl fishing, and fishing in general.
And what can you tell us about the lives of the women who lived in these houses?
They were involved in their daily activities, but as I said, beyond really the cooking, it is very difficult to tell you anything beyond, because you have to imagine this is not a place like Pompeii where life was frozen in its activities. This is a place which was systematically emptied when the people left this village in the 60s and beginning of the 70s. So that in most cases the houses have been emptied, and we find only the remains of life before. But you can see a lot of things, like every house has a well. This water was not really consumable for drinking, because it was a very brackish water. And we know from the sources that the wells which brought drinking water into the town were beyond the first row of palm dunes. And we know also that this was not always very stable, because we know from history, at least at the beginning of the 19th century, when during the British attacks, Jazeera Hamra was empty. Nobody lived in Jazeera Hamra. With a beautiful drawing from 1820 of Jazeera Hamra with all their houses, but nobody was living in the town, and the British were very surprised. But they learned that the wells behind the sand dunes had fallen dry. So people had to go back to their palm gardens in Khat, Fahlain and other places, and only a few fishermen were living in the town. A few years later, when the wells had water again, people moved back into the town, and it was again a town with life. But this must have been an up and down during the existence of Jazeera Hamra.
It's very interesting to know, actually. Sorry, excuse the flapping. I think it's a lot windier than we expected for today. But thank you so much, Christian, for also sharing with us what life was like to the best of our knowledge in these very incredible villas in Al Jazeera Hamra. Seth, I come back to you with a question. So, looking ahead in the future, what measures or strategies do you believe are essential to ensure the continued recognition of the value of Al Jazeera Hamra for future generations, especially as someone who started documenting in your project the landscape, let's say, of Al Jazeera Hamra?
If it's not already been begun, I think it's essential to document and record the stories and traditions of the people who once lived here. I think that it's essential to capture the oral literature, the traditions, daily life, what people did, from the memories of the people who lived here. That will help give a more complete picture of Al Jazeera Hamra. when I was developing my model for digitally preserving Al Jazeera Hamra, there was a great risk of Al Jazeera Hamra collapsing. And so, luckily, the community and also came have gotten together and to understand that this is a treasure. And it's preserved well. So I think a tool that I would introduce for the dissemination of knowledge is augmented reality, where you can have QR codes placed strategically throughout the village, where you can be able to learn about the people who lived in the homes, what they did, what was part of daily life, what the games kids played, unique tools that were associated with fishing and pearling for this unique place. Those are things that would be instrumental for people to understand traditional Emirati life.
I think that's a really interesting idea. I'm not sure if it's been done or if people have been talking about it, but it's, I think, an excellent way for people to have a more immersive experience, I would say. And also just to perhaps cater a little more to, I don't want to say cater to Gen Z, but I think it's a good way to connect with people and help them kind of experience and think more about what life was like here in the past.
I can add one thing.
Sure.
The other thing that you can do with the augmented reality is you can do digital reconstructions of the buildings that only have footprints. So being able to understand what it may have looked like without obstructing or changing what we know it looked like.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I don't know if you've talked to Zlatan and maybe Felix.
He's a colleague of mine, yes.
Yeah. They also have some really interesting virtual reality. I think, I know there's a difference between augmented and virtual, which I'm not quite sure of myself, to be quite honest. But I think even dabbling with having different ways in which people can experience Al Jazeera Hamra is something very valuable. And it's also an interesting way to tie Al Jazeera Hamra and its past to the future in terms of what technology can offer us that is very valuable. So thank you so much for that. Mr. Ahmed, I have my third question for you. So, I mean, Al Jazeera Hamra Heritage Village, I think this year, at the very least, it's been 10 or more years since the project has been taken on officially by the Ras Al Khaimah government. What lessons or insights have been learned from the preservation journey of this village that maybe could be applied to future projects or initiatives in Ras Al Khaimah or even the region?
What has been accomplished in Al Jazeera Al Hamra project and the experience and practices from which we have benefits and learn many successful lessons that will be applied in many projects that the department intends to undertake in the future. As everyone knows, the Emirates of Ras Al Khaimah has succeed to register 4 of our main site in the tentative list of the UNESCO, which is the Pearl Trading City of Al Jazeera Al Hamra, Shamal area, Julfar, the commercial city, and the cultural sense in Daya. It sheds light on a group of important sites in the history of Ras Al Khaimah, which will be focused and prepare them to be among the elements of tourist and culture attraction in the Emirates.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed. Are there any potentially, I think, was Daya Fort, I don't want to say restored, conserved? Is conserved the right word? Was it conserved before Jazeera al-Hamra or after?
It is before, yeah.
So would you say that there were lessons taken from Daya that were applied to Jazeera al-Hamra?
It is different site, and each site there is some specification and a way of restoring. When we mention Daya, we just only highlight the fort itself. But here in Jazeera al-Hamra, there is a combination of multi buildings, houses, schools, mosques. Large area of restoring than what we have in Daya. But each of our sites there is some difference and a way of do the development.
Do you want to add something, Christian?
Absolutely, I can only agree with Ahmed. This is really, every site is special, every site needs a special attention and different strategies. One cannot compare one site with the next.
Thank you both so much. Christian, I have my third and final question for you, and then we'll just have the question for all participants. Can you maybe elaborate on how the preserved cultural practices or traditions in this village reflect the historical fabric of the region?
Again, I would emphasize that we're talking about cultural fabric is that we talk about a whole village which is preserved in its totality. And this is already giving an idea of how people lived together, because you see on the size of, let's say, the narrowness of the pathways, how compounds are combined. You can get this fabric. And this is unique because there is no other site in the whole of the Gulf which is preserved in this way. Most or all other sites, I know of at least, have been changed by modernity, changed by the moment when money and sort of the oil came in and things were removed, rebuilt, streets were removed, whole quarters were sometimes bulldozed and rebuilt in a completely different way, destroying the fabric which a village or a town like Jazeera Hamra originally was. So if somebody wants to understand any town in the Gulf, he has to come now to Jazeera Hamra to see how the fabric of a village would look like, or a town. Let's say Jazeera has a bigger than a village, it's a town. How this fabric would be. So that's the reason why it is so interesting to walk on the way. And you can see it's an organic. It's not a town planning. You don't see any town planning. It's really an organic development of the village. And where families and clusters are visible, where you can really see how this place grew until the moment it was really abandoned in the 60s.
I think this is one of the most interesting things that I found about Jazeera al-Hamra. Everything is so tight-knit. Like if you look at the rest of Ras al-Khaimah, and I think also with modernity and just the fact that cars are more available, they're more affordable and accessible to us now, people can live in further away places from the center of where they live. But here, there's one souk with several shops, there's several masjids, there's several mosques, there's a main fort, but then all of the houses are relatively very close to each other. I think, how long would it take to walk from one end of Jazeera al-Hamra village to the other?
No, I mean, when you really walk, even if you walk from here now to the other end, 10 minutes maybe, maximum, 15 is already too much, but 10 minutes. So yes, everything is reachable by foot, and you have to imagine everybody in this town, which is one also very, very important factor.
Yeah, definitely would have had very, very strong kinship ties, I think, both within immediate family, extended family members, and then neighbors. And also a separate question that I just wanted to know, because I know that AJAH tribe lived here, but also other tribes lived here. Would most of the clan be related to one another? Do you happen to know if the people who lived here were distantly related to one another by virtue of their kinship, or would there have been more like genetic diversity there? I'm just curious.
If I will say that Jazeera Hamra, when it's been as one of the main ports and hub on the Gulf, for sure that will attract many of the families who's living maybe in some other places to start their life, start their businesses here. They might be not under the same tribe, but while they are living here in the city, for sure they will have some connection with them. By years they will have that kind of relation, like marriage, and through the generations they will be having that connection with the original people who's living here in Jazeera Hamra. This is what happened, like in whole modern place contain like many number of population.
Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, with the growth of the village, you essentially have more generations growing up in a Jazeera village, and I think at its height it was about 2,000 people or less, maybe.
I think more than 2,000 people. Yeah, I mean, we have 450 compounds. So think of every compound. Between 6 and 10 people at least in every compound. So I would say really Jazeera Hamra between 3,000 and 5,000 is possible, probably even more.
Oh, I did not know that. I thought that at its height it was about 2,000, but...
No, that's the reason why we can really talk about the town and not the village. Yeah.
Wow, okay, that's very interesting to know. And I think that also explains why it was so dense compared to other places.
Yes, I mean, no, the thing is, it was dense like any town here. I mean, the thing is that most of the towns in the Gulf would have had the same type of density. Only that a lot of these densities have been lost when roads have been widened to make space for cars, and houses disappeared or were changed completely. So that's the reason why it looks very dense, but this is typical for any of the towns at the Gulf Coast.
Of course, I'm speaking as someone who doesn't live in this kind of a town, but that makes a lot of sense, of course, based on the history of the region. All right, I think we've come to the end of the part of the panel where the four of us have a conversation, and we'd like to turn to you in the audience. Does anyone have any questions for our lovely speakers? If not, perhaps we can wrap up the session. Thank you all so much for coming down. Thank you, Seth, for driving down from Sharjah. Thank you both for, I think, not just for this panel, but for all of the work that you and your team and Hana and all of you lovely, I don't know if you're all archaeologists, but thank you all so much for...
Yeah, all
archaeologists. Wow. thank you all so much for the wonderful, amazing work you've done here in the Jazeera Hamra. Honestly, I think you guys don't get enough credit, so I'm here to toot that horn and give you guys a shout out for all the wonderful work you do. So thank you so much, and thank you again to our lovely audience. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you learned a little bit more about Jazeera Hamra. Please spread the word, tell people to come and see us here. And yeah, if you want to see another speaker series, tomorrow my colleague Dr. Tiffany Smith will be moderating a session on the transformative potential of travel. But thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.